Yo, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back, and once again, welcome back. My name is Jay the Reporter, and this is yet another installment of the Halftime Adjustment. What we got in store right now for you guys is Coach K's post-game against NC State and why I totally agree with them. And also, we're going to talk about the coronavirus and how that's going to be affecting sports going forward. So we're just going to jump right into this. Oh yeah, and also going to talk about the combine and where I believe some guys actually helped themselves and where some guys hurt themselves. But as we get into it, we're going to jump right into it talking about Coach K. Okay, so over the weekend, well, not over the weekend, it happened on Monday. Duke beat NC State by 19, 88-69, and on a radio show on 24/7 Sports, Coach K was quoted in saying, after being talked about, by some of the fans, and people were saying, oh man, he's not doing that good of a job coaching this year and things of that nature. Now, if you're Coach K, all right, just keep this in mind. If you're Coach K, I still find this hilarious. You are the all-time winningest coach in Division I. Point blank. No one has more wins than this man. He's led Duke to 12 Final Fours and 5 national championships and didn't start winning those until the 90s. Now, you're talking in pretty much the last 30 years, he's won 5 national championships. He's won more championships in the last 30 years than any other coach in college basketball. There's no other coach that has more than 3, if I'm not mistaken. No other coach since then has more than 3. This man put up 5. And not to mention has done it with the game changing, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. What I really want to focus in is the quote. And I'm going to read this directly from Bleacher Report. He says, and I quote, I mean, you can question my coaching and what the hell. And then when you do question it, just come into Cameron and look up at the ceiling and then find out if you should question that. There's no way you cannot agree with that. There's no way. Look, in the first episode, I told everybody I am an avid Carolina fan. I love the Tar Heels, but I have a healthy hatred for Duke. Just by being a Carolina fan, I have that. But also, I have a healthy respect for what this coach has done. Keep this in mind. When he took over Duke, Duke was the 3rd team in the state that you would look at and say, okay, North Carolina has some really good schools here when it comes down to basketball. You had North Carolina, which is the cream of the crop. Then you had NC State. Wake Forest would pop in every once in a while and show their heads. And then you had Duke. Those were the 4 teams across the state of North Carolina. When you said basketball, Duke was the 3rd team you would more than likely bring up. Coach K took them from being an afterthought to basically making them the brand that you associate with greatness in college basketball. Like I said, I am a Tar Heel fan, but I have no problems in saying that since 1990, Duke has been the better program. Point blank. They have been the better program. They've won more national championships in that time period, 5-4. And this is just in comparison to UNC. They've won more conference championships and regular season conference championships. And also, not to mention, they had a longer head-to-head win streak going. Now, like I said, I'm only 32, so basically for my entire life, I have seen Duke be dominant. But I've also seen how they've adjusted to how the game has changed. They have taken, they went from being a team where you would build the team over 4 years, and every 4 years, you were graduating guys into the NBA. Now, you had your Grant Hills, Christian Laettners, Bobby Hurleys. I mean, you had those guys who stayed 3 and 4 years, then go pro. And also, J.J. Redick, Sheldon Williams, for the guys who grew up around the time that I did. So those are the guys that you kind of grew up like, oh, I hate. Like the way I feel about J.J. Redick in a Duke jersey is the same way that I'm pretty sure everyone who's like 10 years older than I am feels about Christian Laettner in a Duke jersey. So, and that goes for not just Carolina fans, but Kentucky fans as well. I know they feel the exact same way. But when you look at just what they've built and also how they've adjusted to how the game has changed, keep this in mind. This one and done thing is relatively new. We're talking basically since 2008. And I could barely say 2008 simply because there was only a few schools who were doing it and a few coaches who really saw it happening. One was John Calipari when he was at Memphis. And then once he got to Kentucky, he was able to really pull in the one and done talent. And then it all kind of came to a head with the Anthony Davis, Michael Kidd, Gilchrist team that first pushed out and won a natty. And then the next time a freshman-led team did it was 2015 with Duke. But every other national champion has been a team that was senior laden or had a lot of experience, or a team that was young one year then went back and did it again. So we've seen how good the one and done thing can go. I mean, we almost had Kentucky run the table back in 2015 when they caught that loss to Wisconsin, which that loss came out of absolutely nowhere. And then Duke goes on to win it. I really thought it was going to be Duke-Kentucky final, which would have been great to see. I still believe Kentucky would have won that game, possibly even going away. But those were the two best freshman classes that I've seen in quite some time. A lot of people tend to forget that was Grayson Allen's freshman class. And if you're a Carolina fan, you really don't have much respect for that man either. But just kind of looking over it all, I can honestly sit here and say that Coach K is one coach who should never be questioned. And another reason I would give for that, this man not only has the respect of high school talent that wants to come and play for him, but also has the respect of NBA talent. Keep this in mind, LeBron James was more than likely going to go to Duke. Kobe Bryant was more than likely going to go to Duke. Those are two of the greatest of all time. Like, anyone who says anything different than that is flat out lying to you. That is the top brand in all of college basketball. Like I said, I'm saying this as a Tar Heel fan. I do want us to beat Duke every single time we match up against them. But I would be stupid to sit here and not acknowledge greatness when it's right there in my face. But guys, on the back half of the show, like I said, we're going to talk about the combine, and we're also going to talk about the coronavirus and how that's affecting not just the combine for the NFL, but also for interactions between the NBA and MLB fan bases and their players as well. So you guys stay tuned. We're going to get into that in the second half of the show. Once again, it's the halftime adjustment. I'll hear from you guys again on the back half of this break. All right, y'all, welcome back, and once again, welcome back to the second half of the show. Now, I said we're going to talk about the combine, so we're going to touch on this real quick. Now, one of the main stories heading into the combine was Henry Ruggs III, wideout out of Alabama, was going to go for John Ross's 40-time record, and he came pretty close. I mean, he ran a sub 4.3, so he ran a 4.27 official time, which is still super impressive. Now, granted, with that kind of speed, you know, you kind of just got to see it to believe it kind of speed. I mean, some guys are just fast, running in straight lines. But as a wide receiver, unless you're running a 9 route or a go, things like that, you're not really running in a straight line. Not too many times. A lot of the most popular routes in the NFL, slants, ins, outs, curls. There's a lot of those. It's not too often you're going to get a chance just to out the blocks, boom, just go. Super, super rare to be able to do that. But in many positions, you want speed. You really want speed at wide receiver. And there's a lot of it in this draft with, was it 6 guys who ran a sub 4.4? So that's super impressive as far as wide receivers go. But to me, there were a couple of guys who really stood out to me when it came down to the 40 time. One of them was Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor, running back. Kid was definitely my favorite for the Heisman at the beginning of the season, and he was proving it early on. But I just did not see this kind of speed. I don't know if anyone else did. I did not see him being this fast. He ran a 4.39. Dude is 5'10", 226 pounds. If you know exactly how big you are when you are 226 pounds, you are a massive human being at 226 pounds. Okay, you are humongous at that size. There's not really too much more you can get at that. But just kind of looking over everything that I saw over the weekend, 40 times, and, you know, I wonder, like, who really set themselves up to look really, really good out there, and who I believe may have hurt themselves. Okay, guys who helped themselves first. Jalen Hurts, I believe, helped himself. If you take a good look at what Jalen Hurts was able to do this season, after being basically stuck in Alabama, being benched there. The offense not really fitting his skill set all that well. He leaves there, goes to Oklahoma, where they basically open up the entire playbook, and he just goes nuts. Puts up outstanding numbers. Now, granted, the team around him was good enough to win that conference, but not good enough to win anything else. I mean, because they just don't really believe in defense down there in Big 12 country. It's just not something that they have. I mean, the last good defensive team that I remember from that conference was maybe 2005 Texas, and that was mainly because of Taylor Mays. Not Taylor Mays. Well, they had a few decent guys out there, but because Taylor Mays was at USC. But they had some decent talent out there. I just really didn't see many other defenders that kind of just stood out there. But that's one guy that really helped himself. Another guy that really helped himself out with the combine was Jordan Love, quarterback out of Utah State, who numbers took a significant hit, and I was, doing a little bit of research on him, like figuring out exactly who he was, what he is, and I came across something that was very interesting. Listening to what scouts were saying, and then also listening to what other sports podcasters and broadcasters were saying, they were saying a lot of similar things about him that they said about Patrick Mahomes, that they said about other guys around that entire ilk. They said his tape is terrible. He has some things to work on when you look at his tape, but everything else is there. So then you kind of got to break it down. And my man Colin Cowherd really hit it on the head today when he said, take a look at the player and then wonder what happened. Take a look at the coach. And you kind of take a look at the coach and you're like, okay, his coach is kind of terrible. When you really break it all the way back down, his coach is actually pretty horrible. But from what I know and what I've seen, this is probably one of the more deep drafts that I've seen out of the quarterback position. And this is probably one of the faster positions, one of the faster teams I've seen as well. But to get the guys who really impressed, I mean, Tristan Wirfs, the offensive lineman, he was making head out of Iowa. He was making headlines all weekend. I was talking about him at work all week once I saw that 40 time. All right. Now, if I was to read off what this guy's combine results are, you would swear he was a tight end. All right. You would swear he was a tight end. 4.85 second 40-yard dash, 24 reps on the bench press, 36.5-inch vertical jump. You're a lineman. You don't even need to leave the ground. But if he has to, he can get 3 feet up in the air. Broad jump of 121 inches. So can you imagine him coming out of a stance and he can literally just power through? 3-cone drill, 7.65, and a 20-yard shuttle was a 4.68. Just incredible. Like, these are tight end numbers. Now, he did get an overall grade of 6.46, which, according to them, said he'll be a starter within the first 2 seasons, or it could be a boom or bust prospect. So he's right around in there. So his combine score did leave a little bit to be desired, but with everything else, I mean, he was off the charts. Flat out off the charts. Gotta love it. But to get the one guy who really just did not help himself at all, I mean, just no way he helped himself at all, was Jake Fromm, quarterback, Georgia. He's very Andy Dalton-ish. And it's no slight at Andy Dalton and no slight at Jake Fromm, but he doesn't have the strongest arm. And you can tell he was putting his heart and soul, he was putting his family heritage behind every pass he was throwing out there. And it just wasn't enough. He missed on a few deep balls, which, given how the NFL is playing now, it's a lot more vertical. You kind of need that guy who can push the ball down the field. You don't need, like, the days of a Chad Pennington aren't necessarily going to win you a Super Bowl. I mean, that's no better than Dak Prescott in many senses, is that I believe Dak's just a better playmaker. But I believe a guy like Jake Fromm could eventually, could either be a career backup or, can start for a team that just needs a guy who's going to be smart with the football, which he was over the course of his time at Georgia. He was really smart with the football. Didn't cause the team to lose, which is a quality of a quarterback that's truly undervalued. Many quarterbacks are the reason why you win, but you never want to be the reason why your team loses. And that's a big thing. Now, to touch on the last subject of the show, I do 2 subjects, but this week was a little different. The coronavirus is serious, y'all. All right. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's not. I'm not going to sit here and play around it. It's serious. And this is when you know something is serious, is when things outside of normal society starts to become affected. Whenever professional sports has to take a break from how it naturally runs, that's when it should pique your interest just a little bit. Even if you're not a sports fan. And if you are, if you're not a sports fan, you listen to my podcast, I want to say a special thank you. But the NBA and the MLB, these are two of the biggest international leagues when it comes to just bringing talent. The NBA is chock full of guys who aren't from here. You got Joel Embiid from Cameroon, Luka Doncic. This is a ton of guys who are not stateside. So that means that the scouting is international. There are, one of the most important players to me in NBA history was Yao Ming. When I say important, the NBA had to jump through some hoops to be able to get him over here. So that lets you know how deep this scouting goes. So when you have a team that needs that guy and this guy's right there ready for it, now you can't go see this guy play live because the scouting departments don't want to run the risk of these guys getting sick while they're out there or them bringing it back and then more than likely affecting the entire franchise. So they actually changed quite a bit of how they deal, the MLB and the NBA, with how they're going to be able to deal with this. So any international games that were scheduled, you can count on those being canceled. There's no way that I would see, if I was the owner of a team, I don't care how much money I was about to make for me sending my team overseas and all the international dollars and the fanfare and what it would do for the league. All that goes to the side when it comes down to the safety of the players. Because without the players, there's no product. Can you imagine? Let's say I run an NBA team. And let's say, for example, it's the Lakers and the Warriors when they're healthy. These are two of the most star-studded franchises when you take a look at them from top to bottom across the entire roster. That gives you Anthony Davis, LeBron James, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green. That's 5 of the biggest names in basketball. I'm going to send those 5 guys overseas to play a game in front of fans. And then not only that, fans in NBA games, you're very close to the team. Any other sport in America outside of maybe baseball, in some cases baseball, but even then, you're separated by a net or the dugout or anything like that. So maybe up the base paths, you might be able to touch a player, but that's only if the ball's in play. So the NBA, you're a lot closer to not just the action, but to the players. Because when they come through the tunnel, you can reach down, touch their hand, you can reach over with a pen and a jersey and get it signed. So it's very interactive. And the fans, not to mention, baseline, like the seats, courtside seats, basically run right into the team bench. Like you can literally have, you go to a Knicks game, Spike Lee is like 2 seats away from the Knicks bench. That's how close you are to the players. You are 2 people away from RJ Barrett. Like you're that close to the players. So a virus like this can be very concerning when you're talking about a game that's as interpersonal as basketball. Because unlike baseball, I have to touch you in basketball. There's no, I would love to see, just to see if it's even possible, if someone can play a basketball game from beginning to end without touching another player. It's pretty much impossible. But I will tell you this. The NBA is taking the proper precaution. They sent out a memo, and so did the MLB, but I really like what the NBA did. They sent out a memo, and they told the teams, hey, when it comes down to fan interaction, no open hand high fives, no taking anything from the fans. Nothing at all. Don't take anything from them. And then CJ McCollum, very smart guy, goes up and says, you know what? I'll bring my own pen. I'll sign it. I'll just have to bring my own pen. Because let's say this is a family who can't afford to go to many basketball games. In case you haven't noticed, basketball games are extremely expensive for, just the average Joe to go watch a game. And imagine having to take your child with you or someone who wants something autographed or signed. Those seats are extremely expensive because you have to get near them. You have to be right there at them. So when you're seeing it happen that way, this is really a concerning time. When I really just break it all the way back down, it's a super, super concerning time. Because when I take a look at the NBA and I say, okay, the NBA is probably outside of soccer is the most global sport. It can be played with players. You can play a decent basketball game and not be able to communicate with teammates if you all have a decent understanding of the game. Now, with this being the case, the NBA is taking the precautions to keep their guys safe. There's no other way around that. I just love the fact that they're doing it. But all in all, guys, this is becoming way more than it was being broadcast on before. So definitely with your family, with your friends, just be safe, be cautious, do whatever it takes to keep you and your family safe. I'm not saying go out there and start doomsday prepping or anything like that, but when you're going out grocery shopping, buy what you would normally buy, but then get one more, just to kind of stockpile a little bit, because you never know when you're going to be stuck in your own house for a week or two. But guys, that is basically all that we have for this episode on this week. We have a lot more coming up. Like I said, we're still working out some things with our equipment to be able to start shooting some different types of videos. But I do love the engagement you guys are giving. Don't forget, guys, to like, share, comment, subscribe to the channel. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram, where you can find more things, especially those things like on this day type of trivia facts and stuff like that. And I cover those from different games. It's more than just basketball and football. Sometimes I'll throw a baseball fact out there that, you may be like, oh, I didn't know that. Or I'll throw a boxing fact out there, or even just shout out somebody on their birthday. Just because, happy birthday. But I want to thank you guys for the support. I'll be hollering at you guys in a week. Until then, peace.